Welcome to Wisdom for Impact, where we bring you impactful insights that touches on every ramification of your life. A huge thank you to our returning subscribers for your support. Your engagement means the world. If you're new here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more impactful content.
The
Now, let's
title, The
dive in.
Rebirth of a Great Nation, I want you to please understand that whatever we want to do now is not the birth of a great nation, it's only the rebirth. And I'm grateful that anybody at whatever age can become born again. So, what we are saying is that Nigeria is about to be born again. You understand what I'm saying? So let's try and take a peep back into what kind of nation did we birth in the first case. That gives us a little bit, or just looking at a little historical context. Let me start from November 1884. In November 1884, 27 men from about 7 countries, including the United Kingdom, or Britain as it was called at that time, Italy, Belgium, France, Germany, Portugal, and a few others, including the United States. 27 of them gathered into a hotel in Berlin, Germany. And for 3 months, all the way through to February 1885, they sat down and created a map on the wall, and then they, through agreement, started to apportion not a city, not a county, not a country. They apportioned a continent. 27 men. And you look at them and say, what audacity must they have had? How could they have believed that it would be worth enough of their time to invest 3 months sitting down thinking about what they were going to do, recognizing that they were not of the same nation, they were of different nations? Well, let me quickly say that by 30 years' time, by 1915, they had accomplished their goal. One of the things that came out of that was a nation called Nigeria within that time space, 1914. These were 27 men who had less than 1,200 people to come into a nation and take over a nation of almost 200,000 people. How could 1,200 people dominate 200,000 people? Remember, let us deal shrewdly with them. Let us get to the point where they will demean their own numbers. Let us get to the point where they will think their numbers don't count, that their votes don't count. So that if they think their votes don't count, they will not go to the voting ballot box and their vote will never be counted. Then they will say, we said it. Our votes don't count. Does somebody understand what I'm saying? Do you understand how it is deal shrewdly with them? So they dealt shrewdly with us, and within 15 years, what was most interesting was that they came as one people. You never heard that the British fought the French. There was no fight between the Benin Republic and Nigeria. No! They kept one accord. Whatever they agreed in that room, they stayed with it. They made sure that by the time they were going out, everything was in accordance with the plan. So they were one people. Somebody say with me, one people, please. They were speaking with one voice, even though they were speaking different languages. The message was the same. The vision that they had to conquer a people was the same. And lastly, they were able to ensure that they had set and targeted goals, so that about the same time, all of them, 7 nations, penetrated, developed administrative structure, and all of them accomplished at about the same time. So they were one people. Can I hear that again? They spoke with one voice. They acted with one vision and they aimed towards one target. That was to conquer. And they did it. Why? Because God himself had already acknowledged that if as one people speaking with one voice, they have begun to do this, nothing they imagine to do shall be impossible for them. So they literally took the principles of impossibility and make it work for them. Well, fast forward another 30 years, 1945. This time, a people had been born into colonial rule, but for whatever the reason is, they were able to send them out of their own space. And this time, young Africans gathered together in October 1945 in a room in Manchester, United Kingdom. They were young men, 79 of them. In there you had people like Jomo Kenyatta, Julius Nyerere. You had people like Obafemi Awolowo, and several of the other guys who were all in there from all across Africa. Long story cut short, they also learned the master key. Now, they didn't have any power. They were young. Chief Obafemi Awolowo was born in 1909. In 1945, he was only 36 years old. He hadn't even finished his schooling. He finished in 1946. So he was still an undergraduate. I don't know whether you understand where I'm coming from. But these guys were not thinking, which kind of job am I going to get? They were not thinking about their bellies. They were not thinking about their careers. They were not thinking about what cars they were going to buy. They were thinking about their continent, and they were thinking, what is the purpose of our lifetime at this time? I want you to remember that question, because I'm going to ask you, what is the purpose of our lifetime in this time? Because that is the definition of a generation. Long story cut short, they also came together, having spent 6 days in that hotel in Manchester United. It was called the 5th Pan-African Congress meeting. And what they decided was that they were going to go back home. They were not going to sit in the allure and the comfort of being jackbars. They decided that they were coming back and they were going to fix. But this was the agreement. Until we are all liberated, we are not liberated. It was one for all and all for one. And so they decided to do the same thing. Act as one people. Speak with one voice. Go for one goal or have one vision and target one goal. What was their definition of one people? They said, we are all Pan-Africans. We are Africans. The second thing that they said to themselves was, we will speak with one voice. What was their one voice? We want liberation for our nations. We want to make sure that our children have a better life than the one that we were born into. Our parents didn't fight the colonialists, but we are going to make sure our children will not be born into colonial rule. The third thing was that they made sure that, listen to this, that they were going to act with one vision, and their vision was to have liberation across the whole of the African continent. Their goal was to have independence. And with that, they set to work. Without money, without power, without age on their side. And guess what? Within 15 years, Nigeria, for instance, was liberated. And all across the African continent within 30 years from 1945, by 1975, literally all nations except South Africa was liberated. Why? Because they were one people. Somebody say, what? One people, please? They had one voice, regardless of which language they were speaking. They had one purpose. They had one vision. And they had one goal. When this happened, the world came to attention. They had never believed that such a thing could happen in their lifetime. this is one of the greatest accomplishments. It was the birth of a great nation. And so, 9 months after Nigeria's independence, please get the video ready, Tafawa Balewa, all of a sudden, boom, Nigeria's, the United States President John F. Kennedy invites Tafawa Balewa and our president, our prime minister at that time, into the United States. Now, what you're about to see, I hope you have seen before, but if not, well, thank God for you. Because every Nigerian should see this. You're about to watch, maybe about 3 minutes of the clip, of how America received Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa and his entourage. And I hope that something stirs up in your heart. Let's go.
July 25th, 1961. America is waiting for the arrival in Washington of the Prime Minister of the Federation of Nigeria, Alhaji Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Prime Minister Balewa is making an official visit to America at the invitation of the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Waiting at the airport to greet him are Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson, Secretary of State Dean Rusk, Mr. Joseph Palmer, the American Ambassador to Nigeria, and other high-ranking American officials. Accompanying the Prime Minister is Minister of Foreign Affairs Nwachukwu, Ambassador Udochi, and Minister Shagari and Benson, and other key members of the Nigerian government.
Mr. Prime Minister, I am honored to welcome you and the distinguished members of your party to the United States. This welcome is only the beginning. You will find as you travel through this country a very deep and genuine interest in the exciting developments which are taking place in your country and in Africa today.
I am very pleased to be with you in Washington today, and I look forward to the week which we are to spend among you. I have no doubt that the American people will receive us with all the kindness that they all receive strangers. This is just a brief reply to your very warm address of welcome. Thank you.
An official motorcade now conveys Prime Minister Balewa to the center of Washington. Many friendly Americans are waiting to welcome Sir Abubakar to his home in Washington.
All right, thank you very much. I cut this short because of my time. I have a couple more videos to show you, very brief. I know that you are already feeling, what are you feeling right now? This, lost for words. Well, how many people are asking, how did we get here? Well, let me first say, how did they get there? Because if we know how they got there, we can go back. What they did was they were able to identify 4 key things. How many? The first was a sense of purpose. The why we are alive for such a time as this. We didn't give ourselves breath. So why were we given breath for this time and this moment? In their own time, they came in that room in Manchester to agree that their purpose was liberation. So they were called the generation of liberation. The second thing that they had was a sense of mission. And they understood that their mission was to liberate their countries from colonial rule. All of them had the same idea, they had the same understanding, and they were able to go forth and do it. The third thing they had was a sense of vision. They had a clear picture that someday all their people will be led by their own people. And then the last thing that they had was they had a sense of values. This is where I'm going to be resting my case today. The values. They agreed that this is how we will relate to one another. They agreed that this is what will be important to us. This will be what will define what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad, what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. So once they were able to come up with a sense of values, now they were able to have a sense of unity. It was from that common unity that they developed a community. Even though it was across Nigeria, across tribe, still even across Africa. So one sense of purpose, one sense of mission, one sense of vision, and one set of values. Which of all these things do you think was probably the most significant of all of them? The values. Interestingly, everything we have been hearing from Johnson and Prof is about building a culture. The challenge with what we think culture is we think that culture is what we used to do. Oh, please forgive me. That is not culture. Culture is what we need to do to get what we want. What we used to do is called tradition. Tradition produced history. You can't change history, but you can change culture. Your culture can evolve to make sure that you can deliver your vision even though you can't change history. And so the question now is, whose responsibility is it to evolve culture? Who is going to evolve culture for us? Is it the government? Is it the kings? Who exactly is going to evolve culture for us? Well, I believe that it's going to be the people, and a people who carry the light of Christ. I believe it's going to be a people who have the capacity to think through. And so what I have to do is to ask you a simple question, if you can bring out this card. And I want you to imagine just 10 million people. This is just half of the percentage that Johnson and Bali showed us is our youth population. Just imagine what 10 million young people who will read this together. Can we go together? Let's go. Do you have this? Let's say this is my personal creed. Okay, let's read go. All right, let me read to the hearing just so that the people who are watching online can. I hereby commit to live a lifestyle of leadership and excellence and to do all within my power to bring out the best in me and in others. Do you think there's any tribe in Nigeria that does not want the people to become their best? Is there any church amongst the PFN or even the Christendom that does not want that? What about the Islamic communities? Is there any of them that will say, God forbid, we must not have our best people and you must not bring out the best? So it's possible for us to find that regardless of language, we now have something that we can hold on to that can potentially bring us something. Now let's ask the questions. Are you ready? Number one is, what will happen to a nation where the people choose to make a positive impact on everyone they meet and everywhere they go? What will happen to a nation where the people choose to be solution providers and never part of the problem that needs to be solved? Meaning they will never throw anything on the floor because they are causing problem for somebody else to solve. What will happen to a nation that chooses to be a role model worthy of emulation? What will happen to a nation that chooses to be their best in all they do, particularly the things they're naturally good at? Using the gift of talent and the gift of God, embedded gift of God, to create solutions that can have no parallel. A sense of excellence that is world class. What will happen to a nation where the people choose to do the right thing at all times, regardless of who is doing the wrong thing? What will happen to a nation where the people choose to value time and make the best use of it? What will happen to a nation where the people care and show respect one to another, regardless of whether you are male or female, whether you are older or younger? What will happen to a nation that the people consciously build a great legacy for the next generation? A nation that they will be proud to hand over and the next generation will be grateful to inherit. What will happen to a nation where the people choose to live a life of integrity and honor? What will happen to a nation that is committed to making their family proud, their nation proud, and their God proud? I'm hearing, oh, what's going to happen to that nation? It's going to be great. Would you have to correct the people? They already have self-correction in there. The question now will be, can we as one people agree that it doesn't matter who came up with this? This is not about one person or the other. These are the values of Christ. Everywhere he went, he was doing good. To the sick, he brought healing. To the blind, he brought sight. He solved problems. He is, and we are, Christians because he's still a role model that we're all trying to emulate. When you go through all of this, you realize these were the lifestyle of Christ. I came with a gift for the consideration of the PFN. That is it possible that we can take something, a seed, like Johnson Abali said, that can produce a culture of excellence, so that we can have the most desirable people to live with. And when we have the most desirable people to live with, we will have the most desirable nation to live in. When we have the most desirable people to work with, we will have the most desirable nation to work in. When we have the most desirable people to do business with, we will have the most desirable nation to do business in. And when we have the most desirable people to raise the next generation, then we'll have the most desirable nation to raise the next generation in. Ladies and gentlemen, our fathers in the faith, perhaps we have a seed in our hands. Perhaps we can choose to ask ourselves, would we like to do something with it? I leave it to the vision and the great gift of the men and the women of God in this house to say, a new Nigeria is not only possible, it's an obligation to deliver. An